So back in the early 90s, I'd return home from college for the summer. That always meant that my hometown bandmates and I would reassemble and start practicing and putting together set lists with the goal of booking some gigs by the end of summer. Well, it never seemed to work out that way. I mean, it was summer. Other things, jobs, girls, vacations, etc., always got in the way. However, that didn't mean I wasn't playing. My future and current brother-in-law played drums in the house band at a local country bar, and I had a standing invitation to sit in whenever I wanted. So even though I was studying classical guitar and I was the metal guy, I spent several summers sitting in with a country band, and it definitely broadened my musical horizons, and it forced me to figure out how to fit into some unfamiliar playing situations. So one night I remember the band leader calling a song I didn't know, so I asked what key it was in, and the bass player looked at me and said, and I quote, D major, split. Well, I didn't know what that meant, but I kept my wits and I was able to fake my way through the song. Now, I can't remember if I ever asked anyone what a split major is or if I figured it out on my own, but it was a term I had never ever heard in any of my theory classes. But here were a bunch of old timers in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and they used the term regularly, and I began to as well. Now, I know it's not necessarily a formal musical term, but you know what? I absolutely love it, and I use it all the time with my private students. So let's talk about split major keys. So what the heck is a split major? Well, the quick answer is that it's a way of playing two very distinct flavors of major at the same time. Think of it as a conventional major key that borrows just one chord from its parallel Mixolydian mode, the major flat 7, and it uses that chord as a replacement for the natural 7 diminished chord. Okay, this may sound a bit complicated, and the theory behind it can get a bit complex, but I'd rather we think of this in terms of being something more like a hybrid key. As a matter of fact, I'd like to propose that the split major is the rock and roll major key. In fact, if you've seen the Magic Rock and Roll Blues Square episode, that's the split major. So in any conventional major key, our native chord breakdown is major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, dominant 5, minor 6, and diminished 7. Now, in previous videos, I've always ignored the diminished 7 simply because it does the same job as the 5-7. Plus, if we're dealing with conventional open or bar chords, there aren't many, if any, practical diminished triad shapes. So realistically, this means we've cut ourselves off from 7 chords, right? Well, not really. If we borrow the 7 chord from the parallel Mixolydian mode, and remember, Mixolydian is a major key with a lowered or flat 7, we now have access to a new chord, the major flat 7. Okay, let's do this in D major. At the most basic level, we expect to see D, G, and A or A7. Now remember, we can also use the secondary chords E minor, F sharp minor, and B minor. Now, the main reason I'm leaving the diminished 7 chord or the C sharp diminished out is simply because the A7, which is the 5 chord, contains the 7 diminished, and the A7 sounds more rock and roll anyway. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to briefly acknowledge the stock Mixolydian chord progression. It's actually really simple, and when reduced to a formula, we're talking about the chords 1, flat major 7, and 4. So in the key of D, that would mean the chords D, C, and then a pair of Gs. Now, does that sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's Sweet Home Alabama, and Led Zeppelin's Your Time Is Gonna Come, and the Marshall Tucker Band's Can't You See, plus about 1,000 more. And notice that the 5 chord, the A or A7, is quite conspicuously missing. Why? Well, because in Mixolydian, the 5 is minor, and our modern ears do not like to hear minor 5s in major keys, except for Louie Louie. And that's really the only reason we talk about that terrible, terrible song 60 years later. Anyway, this Mixolydian fragment, the major 1, major flat 7, and the major 4, is not the split major. It's its own thing, but if we take this fragment and combine it with our major chord sequence, we see that the flat major 7 can slip into the empty diminished 7 chord slot. This means we now have D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A or A7, B minor, and C major, and then back to 1. And this is the split major key because it contains elements of conventional major and the Mixolydian mode. So let's look at a real song example. This is the verse chord progression from John Prine's Angel from Montgomery in the key of E. And notice that every chord is solidly in the key of E major. It's E, A, and B7. Okay, so here's the chord sequence for the chorus from the very same song. And here we have the E major, the D, which is the flat major 7, and the A, which is the 4. This is clearly the Mixolydian progression we just looked at. So if we take the song in its entirety, we see that it's a hybrid of E major and E Mixolydian. In other words, it's a split major key. So could we add the Mixolydian minor 5 into a split major progression? Sure, if we're already mixing flavors, we can make it work. Remember Louie Louie. But be careful, minor 5s can throw a wrench in the works really quickly, especially if it runs at odds with your melody. Now, I can do an entire episode on the theory behind the split major if anyone would like to see it in a future video. And please let me know if you do. Otherwise, simply learn and apply this formula. Major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major or dominant 5, minor 6, and flat major 7 in all keys. And you'll be well on your way to having complete and total control over all of the split major keys. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I do here. Hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new episode drops, and feel free to leave comments or any suggestions for any topics you might like to see in some future videos. Also, check out my other channel, Live from the Stairwell, and check out some 100% live unplugged performances from, you guessed it, my back stairwell. And I do have several weeks of Christmas content coming in December, so make sure you look for that. Also, keep your eyes open for String 'em Up Shorts, where I address various good guitaring ideas in under a minute. My name's Dave Holland, and thanks for watching String 'em Up. Have fun, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.